Yeah, everybody. You can see that in front of me, and you see the title down below. Yeah. 2014 is going to equal 85 years of this character. Yeah, 85 years. It's hard to believe, isn't it? You know, I know 85th anniversary isn't as important as a 75th anniversary or 100th anniversary. But the character's been around this long. He's been around for a long time, and to learn how he started out, to learn how this Popeye character started out was, is intriguing. To know that in 1929 he first appeared in the Thimble Theaters comic strip as just a minor character, hired by Castor Oil, if you will, to help pilot a sailor ship or something, or whatever. But to know about that, and to know that originally he was brought in as a minor character, but it's proven throughout all of animation, and even sometimes live action, even a minor character can take off to superstardom, and that's exactly what he did. As a matter of fact, when he made his animation debut, he made it presumably in a Betty Boop cartoon, in which Betty Boop was only in it for a short period. Most of it was focused on Popeye. And lo and behold, after that, off to the races. Now Popeye, of course, also had some ditches. Of course, some of his cartoons mainly consisted to about 7 minutes, maybe something like that. But sometimes he would have longer ones, like, he would, like Aladdin, his adaptation of Meeting Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, Sinbad, his version of Aladdin. He had all these different colorized animated shorts that ran for about maybe, I think, a little longer than 7 minutes, mainly around maybe 15, 20 minutes at times. But that showed you the popularity that this character had. To be able to hold his own, and if I can look at the thing here. Yeah, Aladdin, okay. Sinbad in 36, Sinbad the Sailor in 36, 37, 40 Thieves, and 39, the Aladdin adaptation. To know that in those 3 years he could hold his own with those kind of cartoons at that time, but by having those colorized and most of the others still in black and white, it's quite interesting. So that was pretty cool. And in 1933 to know basically 4 years later, after his debut in Thimble Theater, the comic strip, 4 years later he was adapted into his own cartoons, like the ones I just mentioned, shows you the popularity of the character. And basically his cartoons ran for, the theatrical run of Popeye cartoons, like I said, started essentially with basically a Betty Boop cartoon, which was the spin-off, or the takeoff, which was the pilot, if you will, for all the Popeye cartoons that came afterwards. And the theatrical cartoons ran for quite some time. They ran for quite some time. They ran from 1933 to essentially 1957. So that's 24 years they ran, almost 25 years. They ran in theaters. And they would be shown before every theatrical film. And sometimes, back in the 30s and 40s, they'd be shown as Saturday morning matinee cartoons. So, again, to see the impact that this character had back then was pretty cool. Now, he started out, now speaking of his cartoons started out differently. Anytime they come on television, or anytime you see them on DVD and all that, you always look and see two different versions of Popeye. You're thinking, why is there two different versions? Well, the first versions were done by Max Fleischer, the guy that was known for Betty Boop and the Superman cartoons. Max Fleischer it gave him a specific design. You know, where basically you see the Fist of Fury one, that's basically the design they gave him. That was the design they gave him for quite some time. And the Fleischer one, and his run with Fleischer on the Fleischer cartoon, and his Max Fleischer run ran basically, trying to think here, ran basically from 1933 to 1942. So basically for basically 9 years, Max Fleischer basically was the one in charge of doing the Popeye cartoons. And he was the one basically designing the Popeye characters as you have seen them. Now, after that, of course, King Features, basically Paramount, or Famous Studios, I should say, basically Paramount, took over. And they gave the characters a bit of a remake and a redesign, as you would pretty much see. As you would pretty much see from 1942 all the way to basically, from what I'm looking at here, August 9th, 1957. So yeah, for about 24 to 25 years it ran. Now there was 122 shorts under the Famous Studios Paramount banner. $122 shorts combined with, I think the other, I'm trying to see how many were, 109 under the Max Fleischer. So you're looking essentially at a 223 to 224 shorts altogether. Now that's quite a long run from 1933 to 1957. Pretty strong run. Now, as we got into the Famous Studios Paramount era, not only did we see a redesign of the characters, but as we got later on in the years, we started to see Paramount and Famous Studios go in directions with the characters that, when Max Fleischer was doing it, would never dare to do. I mean, he'd throw in a little bit of a comedy thing, a little bit of a thing here and there, but most of the time it was all kind of like toned down to be more realistic at times. I mean, it was a cartoon, but it was more toned down to be realistic than what it was. If you get what I said, if you get what I'm saying. Sure, there was some toony antics, if you will, toony antics at the time throughout some of the cartoon shorts, but not as much and not as prevalent as when Famous Studios took over. Famous Studios did more with them. Famous Studios did more than what you would expect them to do. For example, there's a there's a cartoon, I can't think of the name right now, but there's a cartoon, basically, a cartoon short under the Famous Studios run, where Olive gets sucked into this candy kiss machine. She gets sucked into this candy kiss machine. And I apologize for that. I'll have to move my bird. Or my mom's bird, anyway. Sorry about that, folks. But anyway, like I said, there was an animated short, I can't think of the name right now, that under the Famous Studios run, there was a scene in this animated short that had Olive get sucked into a candy kiss machine at a fair, and the candy kiss machine's just pumping out little candy kisses, wrapped candy kisses here and there, and then all of a sudden it just like squeezes real hard and pops out a big old candy kiss machine, which is actually Olive wrapped up inside the wrapper. So, you know, they did things like that. I mean, yeah, I'm not denying Max Fleischer didn't do things similar, but Famous Studios, during the Famous Studios run, they took it to another level. A much needed level, I guess you could say. A more toony level. Because I think between that cartoon as well, there was another one called Beach Peach. And basically, this is the first time I'd seen this. I'm being totally honest. It was the first time I'd ever seen this. Basically, what was dubbed as the 5 count, the three count, basically. Basically, in cartoons, when a character is underwater or something like that, they're drowning or something, they can't swim. Back then, and I think even up to recently in the 80s, you had a character put their hand up going like 1, 2, going like 1, and then puts the hand back down under the water, then brings it back up for 2, and brings it back down, and brings it up for one last time, 3, and then that's it. Basically saying, hey, we're running out of breath here, we're done, or we just drowned, or something like that. So, Beach Peach basically had that with Olive. Now, what was funny about this is, previously, in some cartoons that came before, and I think even during the Famous Studio run, maybe I'm wrong, but basically Olive knew how to swim in the Max Fleischer run, and I think maybe a bit at the beginning of the Famous Studio run as well, but I'm not too sure. She knew how to swim, but apparently in Beach Peach she didn't. So there's a scene where basically the Bluto type character, or it's just Bluto, they just gave him blonde hair and all that, and shaved off his beard. But anyway, the Bluto type villain or antagonist pops, or basically doesn't pop, but basically unplugs the air filter. It's kind of like, you know, those little blow up water horses and all that you would ride. Basically, he loosens or unplugs the air plug on there and lets the air out. And of course, in being any cartoons thing, the thing just takes off like a shot. And what happens is Olive gets thrown off, Popeye's still holding on, and she starts calling for help, and all of a sudden she just goes under, and then there is my first introduction as a kid, because I really remember this, my introduction as a kid to that 3 count deal, because it was like I never knew about that. I never did. And it was pretty cool. And I thought it was kind of funny. I mean, I know what you're thinking. It's not funny when somebody drowns. I get that. I understand. But in cartoons, it was like, that was kind of cool. I had never seen that before. It was the first time I'd seen it, and ironically, it was through the character, it was through a Popeye cartoon. It was. It's really cool. And again, that was the difference between the Famous Studios run And the Fleischer and the Max Fleischer run, you never saw that in the Max Fleischer cartoons that much. That was a big difference. The thing is, they changed some things, but you didn't know what they had changed, which if you're a longtime fan, threw you off. Another thing that they did, and I'm sure Max Fleischer may have done this once, but not really. One of the other things that they did was they applied what TV tropes has dubbed as TVtropes.com has dubbed as the lustful melt. And they applied this, I think once, maybe 3 times, but mostly, one time it was at the end of a Popeye cartoon, which was kind of like a Sleeping Beauty parody. It was at the end of a Popeye cartoon there, in which it happened to Popeye. But then, most of the time, the lustful melt gag, as TV Tropes calls it, happened to Olive. Not once, but twice. The first time was in Fistic Mystic. And it was after Bluto had kissed her. And it's like, she slips out of his arms, and she's going down the stairs, and she turns yellow. But here's the thing. Here's the difference between this one and the one that came later. She still retains her shape. It's like she got flattened by a piano. That's how it looked. You know how you get those cartoons where characters are running up a stair, and then the character they're chasing after throws a piano at them, and next thing you know, you see the piano go by, or the heavy object go by, and the character that's trying to avoid it comes after, and they're just coming down the stairs all flattened. That's basically what Olive's reaction was in Fistic Mystic. You know, she just basically that. I guess from famous studios at the time, that was dubbed the lustful melt. Basically, she just went flat and just went down the stairs in her shape, in a flattened state of her humanoid shape. Now, like I said, it wasn't the first time that happened. The second time it happened was in 1956, in one of my personal favorites called Parlez-vous Woos. Now, Parlez-vous Woos was a perfect example of famous studios not just evolving with the Popeye, not just evolving with their run of the Popeye cartoons, but definitely proving that you could make the Popeye cartoons very toony. You know, not just so human-like, but very, very cartoonish, very, very toony. And basically, what I mean is in Parlez-vous Woos, it seemed that anytime something happened, or anything was spoken, it physically happened. Like at the beginning, you have Olive, she's watching this parody, I guess you could say, of the Continental, called the International. And at the beginning, he tells Olive and all the women viewers, I guess you could say, that their eyes are like limpid pools. And what happens is Olive shuts her eyes, opens them up, and and not only does she open them up, but they're bigger than what they were, and they turn into limpid pools. So basically anything that happened, any kind of reaction that Olive would have in this one, as well as the other characters, was very toony, was basically very toony exaggerated, if you will. Even to the point that at the end, and this is the only time Popeye does this, Popeye eats a second can of spinach after he eats the first one and uses it to not only defeat Bluto and reveal who this International really is to Olive, revealing that it's Bluto, but when he eats the spinach again, he gets his own like International tuxedo. He kisses Olive on the hand. She turns red. Steam basically comes out of her ears. I mean, basically she turns red. Her head inflates a little bit. Steam comes out of her ears. And then she tells Popeye that she feels just like butter in his hand. The next thing you know, as she's saying this, she melts down into a puddle of butter. Now, like I said, the difference between this lustful melt out in Parlez-vous Woos compared to the lustful melt that she did in Fistic Mystic is here she melts down completely into a puddle of butter. I don't know, with just her face, with just her eyes and a smile on her face, and she's just running down the floors, you know. And as the cartoon ends, you kind of see like these little spots, like little dry spots opening up in the puddle. And one, because if you do slow motion on it, one shows one of the dry spots opening up right near her eye, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, to me, this was the first time I was introduced, again through a Popeye cartoon, to the lustful melt gag. It was the first time. I mean, I did find out later on that it took place, that Warner Brothers had done it in the Porky Pig cartoon Swooner Crooner, but this was the first time I had seen it physically, or I'd seen it on screen, visually, through a Popeye cartoon. And I remember I watched it when it was aired as part of the Tom and Jerry Super Funhouse on WTBS back in the mid-1980s. I remember that. So again, a lot of the things that I became a fan of, and I'm sure anybody else became a fan of, I got introduced first to by watching a Popeye cartoon. I mean, the things that I mentioned that were showcased in shows like Animaniacs and Tiny Toons and some of the Disney shows, this cartoon series, this character in his animated shorts, was the first time I had seen him. And it was tremendous. And to me, being a kid, it was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then, of course, his popularity led to him getting a TV series by King Features, which was kind of in the style of, let's say, the Beatles animation and stuff like that. Beatles animation and Underdog animation and stuff like that. And then, of course, he had another cartoon series in the 70s. And then he had a movie, which you see right there, in 1980, starring Robin Williams and Shelley Duvall, which I guess you could kind of say takes inspiration from the, not just the comic strip originally, but from the Max Fleischer cartoons. And then later on he had another cartoon series down the line, and then another one called Popeye and Son. And the other cartoons that you had after that, it's like you had the all-new Popeye show, you had Olive in the Army, you know, and stuff like that. So you had all these things that came about because of Popeye's popularity, and it all came about when originally this guy was just supposed to be a minor character in a 1929 comic strip for Thimble Theater. That's hard to believe. That is hard to believe, folks. Really hard to believe. And then again, like I said, his popularity continued on and on, and then as we got into the later years, you know, his cartoons were still shown. Cartoon Network would still show his cartoons as a half-hour block, late at night sometimes, or early in the morning. And I would catch it at times when I could and record it. Or record what I could. But anyway, Cartoon Network would still show it. Boomerang still shows his cartoons, so that's good. And, you know, he had different animation studios working with him. You know, he had the Max Fleischers, he had Famous Studios, he had King Features, like I said, that kind of did the Beatles stuff and all that. He had Hanna-Barbera, so he had all sorts of different animators working on his adventures and all that. He also he also returned to the small screen, I guess you could say, in the 2000s with The Quest for Pappy, which was his first CGI cartoon ever. Now, of course, he's just like any animated character. You know, he's had different showcases in other kinds of media, not just movies. He's had showcases in comic books, in his own comic books, video games. In fact, he was one of the first Game & Watch games Nintendo released. So he's done it all. He's even made cameos in shows like Drawn Together. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And now and now he's on the verge of being in his first theatrical feature film in a long time, as Sony Pictures Animation is going to be releasing a movie within the next year or two. And one of the people working on it, I think it's the director or somebody, says they want to make it as artful, and unrealistic as possible. So you might see some, and from what I get from that, unrealistic. In other words, make it as exaggerated and as, I guess, cartoony as you can get. So that would be pretty interesting to see as well. But overall, no one can underestimate the impact that the Popeye franchise has had. I don't think anybody can underestimate that. I mean, heck, you have a freaking food chain with the name Popeyes. Or fast food chain with the name Popeyes. What does that tell you? Heck, he even had his own spinach line released. So again, what can you say about this character having an impact? What more can you say? You can't. And I think with a movie coming out in a new generation being introduced to him through that movie and through DVDs and Blu-rays, it's only going to get better for this character. I definitely see that as soon as the movie comes out, it starts getting talked about more, and even trailers and stuff are released in the future, you're going to see a revitalization with this character and this franchise. So definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, it's 85 years of Popeye. Who would have thunk, huh? So that's all I'm going to say. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below. Let me know what your guys' memories are of Popeye. What are you looking forward to from him in the future? What do you think they're going to do with him in the future, besides the movie and all? Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. And I will talk to you later. God bless and take care.